My father had been dead for exactly 14 days when my older brother robbed him. But what my brother didn't know was that our dad had spent the last 6 months of his life setting a deadly trap for him from beyond the grave. It all started on a freezing Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at my office desk when my phone vibrated. The caller ID showed a local area code from back home in Ohio. A woman named Sarah was on the line, a senior manager at Chase Bank. Her voice had this heavy, clinical hesitation, the kind of tone people use when they're standing in a hospital waiting room, holding the worst news of your life. She said, "Mr. Vance, I'm calling regarding your late father's safe deposit box." My chest instantly tightened, but it was her next sentence that completely froze the blood in my veins. "There was unauthorized activity on the box 3 days ago, and Mr. Vance, we noticed you were added as a co-owner exactly 6 months before your father passed." My mind raced. "What do you mean activity?" I asked, my voice cracking under the sudden weight of panic. Sarah paused, clearing her throat as if looking around to see if anyone was listening. "Someone accessed the box, Mr. Vance. They spent exactly 45 minutes inside the private viewing room, and they left the box completely empty. Our security logs show the person signed in using your father's primary key and a power of attorney document." I hung up the phone. I sat there in the absolute silence of my apartment, my hands shaking so hard I could barely set the phone down. My dad had been dead for exactly 14 days. 2 weeks. My older brother, Garrett, who still lived just 10 minutes away from Dad's old house, had handled everything. The hospice care, the grueling medical bills, the funeral arrangements. I was 600 miles away in Chicago, buried in my own corporate job, feeling guilty but incredibly grateful that Garrett was holding the fort. I trusted him with my life. I didn't even know this safe deposit box existed, let alone that my name was on it. But Garrett knew. And 3 days ago, while the soil on our father's grave was still fresh, he cleaned it out. Before we dive deeper into what Garrett took and the chilling, brilliant reason why my dad set this trap from beyond the grave, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Drop a comment below letting me know which state or city you're watching this from. My name is Logan, and this is the story of 2 brothers, a dead father, and 45 minutes inside a bank vault that changed our family forever. To understand why this hit me so hard, you have to understand our father, Thomas Vance. He was a product of old-school military discipline, a retired Marine who raised us entirely alone after our mother walked out on us when I was just 5 years old. He wasn't a man of big words, and he certainly didn't do emotional hugs. Thomas Vance showed love through structure, rules, and bulletproof legal paperwork. If it wasn't signed, notarized, and filed in a neat manila folder, it didn't exist to him. Garrett and I are 5 years apart. Garrett was always the pragmatic one, the golden boy who showed up, took immediate control of a crisis, and fixed things on the fly. He was aggressive, fast-moving, and hated waiting. I was the analytical one, the quiet kid who looked at the bigger picture, always trying to read between the lines and calculate the risks. Dad knew this about us. He loved us equally, but he understood our deepest flaws better than we understood ourselves. I remember a summer when I was 12. Garrett wanted to build a tree house. Without planning, he grabbed a hammer, bought the cheapest wood, and started nailing it to an old oak tree. By nightfall, the whole thing collapsed under its own weight. Dad didn't yell. He just stood there, looked at the wreckage, and said, "Garrett, speed without direction is just a spectacular way to crash. Logan, go get a pencil and graph paper. We map it out first." That was our lives in a nutshell. When Dad got his terminal cancer diagnosis last year, the doctors gave him 12 months. True to form, he didn't waste a single day crying or feeling sorry for himself. He quietly updated his will, met with his estate attorney, and 6 months before his passing, without telling either of us, he went to the bank and added my name to that safe deposit box. That was his ultimate style, quiet, calculated, no family drama. And as I found out later from Sarah, that box didn't contain cheap family heirlooms or a few $100 in cash. It held my dad's entire life's hustle. The original deed to the family home, certificates for an old tech stock he bought 30 years ago, 2 sealed letters addressed to us, and a specific letter of wishes. And Garrett had taken all of it. My letter, the stock options, the house deeds. Gone. When the reality finally sank in, I didn't just feel angry. I felt an overwhelming sense of grief and betrayal. It's one thing to lose your father. It's another to realize your own flesh and blood is actively trying to cut you out of your final connection to him. I called Garrett that same night. The phone rang 4 times before he finally answered. His voice sounded heavy, exhausted, that breathless fatigue that follows 2 weeks of shaking hands at a funeral home and pretending you have it all together. I didn't beat around the bush. I didn't ask how his day was. I just said, "Garrett, I got a call from Chase Bank today. I know you cleared out Dad's safe deposit box. I know it's completely empty." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. For 5 long seconds, all I could hear was his heavy breathing through the receiver. Then, instead of apologizing or denying it, his voice snapped. It was sharp, defensive, dripping with toxic guilt. "Are you seriously tracking my moves, Logan?" he hissed. "You were 600 miles away, living your comfortable life in Chicago while I watched him wither away to nothing. I was the one paying the hospital deductibles out of my own pocket. I was the one dealing with the funeral director while you just showed up for the service. You don't get to sit there and play the detective with me." His anger confirmed everything. He wasn't a criminal. He was terrified because he had been caught doing something in the dark. I kept my voice deadly calm, mimicking our father's tone. "Garrett, Dad left 2 separate letters in that box. One has my name on it. You have my letter, and you have the assets. I'm not arguing with you on the phone. I just bought a plane ticket. I'll be at the house on Saturday morning." There was another long pause. The anger suddenly drained out of him, replaced by a hollow, broken tone I had never heard from my older brother before. "I didn't open your letter, Logan," he whispered. "The folder is on Dad's kitchen table. Just get here safely." Saturday morning felt like a scene out of cold thriller. I flew into Columbus and rented a car, driving through our old neighborhood under a gray, suffocating winter sky. Walking into Dad's house was brutal. It still smelled exactly like his old pine cologne and the wood fire he used to keep burning in the den. It felt like he was going to walk around the corner at any second. Garrett was sitting at the kitchen table, a half-empty mug of black coffee in front of him. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He looked 10 years older. There was no greeting, no typical brotherhood hug. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. But on the table, exactly as he promised, everything was laid out neatly. The property deeds, the stock certificates, and 2 thick, white envelopes with our names written in Dad's precise, military handwriting. I sat down opposite him, pulled the stock paperwork toward me, and looked at the numbers. 30 years ago, Dad had put a mere $5,000 into a rising tech firm. Today, according to the latest valuation sheets attached, the portfolio's market value sat at exactly $220,000. I looked up at Garrett. His eyes were bloodshot, staring down at his hands. "He planned this whole thing, didn't he?" I whispered. Garrett finally looked at me, a single tear escaping his eye. He nodded slowly, leaning back in his chair. "He knew exactly what I would do, Logan." The moment the funeral was over, I panicked. I started looking at the outstanding medical bills, the estate taxes, the fear of probate court freezing everything. My instinct was to rush to the bank, grab the assets, and handle it all aggressively before the state could touch it. I thought I was protecting the family. "I didn't know your name was on the account." I picked up my envelope, stood up, and walked into my old childhood bedroom to read it alone. I won't share the deeply personal words my father wrote to me on those pages. That is a sacred secret between a father and his son. But as I read through his final instructions, the absolute genius of my dad's plan hit me like a physical blow. Dad didn't put my name on that safe deposit box because he didn't trust Garrett. He put my name on it because he knew Garrett. He knew Garrett's first instinct would always be to rush in, take total control, and handle things aggressively without consulting anyone. Dad knew that by adding me as a co-holder, the bank's security protocol would automatically trigger a notification to me the second the box was touched. Sarah wasn't just a bank manager. She was Dad's ultimate tripwire. He designed this entire crisis from the grave to force me to come home. He knew that if he just left a standard will, Garrett would handle it alone and we would drift apart. He engineered this scenario to make sure both his sons were sitting at that kitchen table together, facing the family's future as equals, forced to communicate. In my letter, Dad wrote a line that shattered my heart. Garrett needs brakes, Logan, and you need an engine. Without each other, neither of you will survive this world. It was the ultimate contingency plan, built by a man who understood his son's strengths and weaknesses perfectly. Over the next few days, Garrett and I sorted through the estate. We argued. Old childhood resentments from years ago came to the surface, but for the first time in a decade, we actually talked. The $220,000 stock was split exactly down the middle. The house remains in both our names, and we're going to decide what to do with it slowly, together. That white envelope sits in my top desk drawer today. Sometimes I don't even open it. I just hold it in my hand because I know every single word by heart. Our dad didn't know how to say, "I love you," in a traditional way. He showed his love through ironclad preparation. My only real regret is that I never got to tell him face to face while he was still here. Dad, I finally understand the plan.